Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Council Sessions. This is where we discuss the mysteries of the Force and seek to answer those complex questions that are clouding the Star Wars galaxy. And on this episode, brought back my co-host over at the Mandalore podcast, Cyber Ren. How are you, sir? What's up?
It is good to be back, D. Vizsla. David.
Yeah.
It is great to be back. No, I'm doing
Unless
great.
you listen to both of them, you don't really even know my name from there. Yeah. But that's
right. Yep. I'm doing good. Good to be back here with you.
Yes, sir. Good to be back. We've been discussing some topics back and forth over the last couple of days, trying to figure out what we want to talk about. You know, it hasn't been a council sessions episode in a while. Not that we haven't been busy, especially me and you doing Mandalore every week when we're covering the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
So everybody, please go check that out if you haven't already. Of course, you probably should watch the Bad Batch because you would be completely spoiled if you just listen to the show.
We do dive deep. Yeah.
Very deep. But this, there's a lot of discussions about this topic going around because of the latest episode of The Mandalorian, making of the Disney Gallery episode that came out, the season 2 finale, where we got a behind the scenes look of how they brought Luke back. And the lingering question that we're going to discuss in this episode is, since The Mandalorian takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and we now know that Ahsoka Tano is alive and well during this time, and she is looking for Ezra, and it looks like an approaching conflict with Thrawn is inevitable. These two characters now live in the same time frame.
Yes.
So basically what we're going to discuss in this episode is, what would it mean to have Luke and Ahsoka meet? Because that is, it's so impactful because of not only because Luke is such a major character in the Star Wars universe right now, obviously, but because of Ahsoka's history. She has now spanned such a big timeline now, from all of the Clone Wars through the 19 years up into the Civil War in the original trilogy, and now 5 years beyond that. So she's been around, she's seen a lot, she knows both eras, could have a lot of knowledge for Luke. So I'll throw it to you first. And really the first thing I want to talk about first with you, Martin, is, who do you think is impacted more by that meeting?
That is such a good question. And I don't really know if you could actually balance them out on a scale, who's going to be impacted more. Because I think once we start talking about it, I think equally they could both be impacted quite heavily by each other's story, by being in each other's lives. So if we look at Luke Skywalker first, for him to find out that Ahsoka trained under his father before he turned to the dark side, just to know that someone spent that much time with his father before he swung to the dark side. There is so much that she could fill him in on what his dad was really like, because he only knows the stories that Obi-Wan told him and a little bit that Yoda fed him, but is mostly what Obi-Wan told him, which was kind of a lot of beating around the bush. Obi-Wan didn't really give him a lot of depth in storytelling, and he did kind of lie a little bit, like cover things up, and so I think to know what his dad was truly like while he was young, the same age that Luke is now, and what his life was like, because Ahsoka was with him for a few years, right?
Right.
So just to know that, like, the heroic stories and how good of a person he was, and why it was so tragic that he did turn to the dark side in the end. Because when you watch the Clone Wars, and I've said it before, probably even on the show with you, Anakin is my favorite part of the Clone Wars because of the story we get to see of his growth and how he grows to become the most powerful Jedi of all time.
Right.
And just for Luke to be able to hear that and to find out what he truly was like and how he was such a good person and so heroic and plus, full of, bravado and, and a bit cocky and all that. I mean, it's just all these different things. Ahsoka could give him so much history and just knowledge about his dad that I think it would give him a whole different perspective, and it would really allow him to know what his dad was like. Because all he saw was, in the end, he knows he felt it. I felt there's good in you, Father. And that's eventually what saves him in the end. But he only gets, maybe 3-4 minutes with him coming back to the good side, and then he loses him. So, yeah, it just, I think it would be so huge for Luke to just know that much about his dad.
Yeah, there's two things for me that come to mind, because I'm with you. I think Luke is the one that potentially is more impacted by this meeting, and the two things that come to mind is one, he doesn't. The question is how much does he actually know of Anakin? You kind of hit at it right now, right?
Yeah.
Obi-Wan explained some. Basically, he was a good pilot and he was a good friend, at least what we heard in the movies, right? Obviously there could have been more that he said to him while they were on the Falcon traveling to Alderaan, the question is too, when he's a Force ghost, how often did he actually show up and reveal himself to Anakin or to Luke and talk about Anakin? In fact,
yeah,
Anakin shows up at the end of Return of the Jedi as a Force ghost. Does he ever reveal himself to Luke to actually have a discussion? Like, we've never seen that. No. We assume it didn't happen, but I don't know why it wouldn't.
Why wouldn't it? If he knows to be able to visit him,
right?
Of course he'd want to talk to his son. This is his chance, right?
But there's a lingering possibility out there. This is kind of a side note, though. But this is a lingering possibility out there that Force ghosts technically can't just show up at any time. Like, there's if you notice in the movies, they only show up when it's really meaningful. Like,
that's true.
When Luke's about to die on Hoth, Obi-Wan shows up, says, "You're going to go train with Yoda." And then, of course, Obi-Wan only shows up those couple times on Dagobah when he's leaving to go face Vader in Empire, and then when he's leaving to go face him in Jedi. So it's like, maybe they only can show up at certain points at certain, I don't know. I don't know. We don't know the expansion of that. So the big question too is, if that's the case, if he's never talked to Anakin as a Force ghost, if he never has talked to Yoda and Obi-Wan again, does he find anything in the texts, in maybe missing holocrons that he can learn about him? Probably not. Again, so that would be my first inkling, and that would lend itself to mean that he would learn so much more from, obviously, Ahsoka. The second thing is, I sometimes go back to the line in The Last Jedi. Now, a lot of people know I'm not a huge fan of The Last Jedi, but it is growing on me. I actually enjoy it more and more as I watch it. Mm-hmm. But, there is a line in there when he's explaining to Rey. It's really the only link to the prequels, when he says, the Jedi let Darth Sidious infiltrate and destroy the Jedi Order, right? I mean, he basically says what happens in the prequels. So he has to learn about Darth Sidious somehow, because all he knows at this point, at least in the original trilogy, all he knows is the Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah,
I don't even know how he ever finds out that was he was a Sith Lord. He was Darth Sidious. So he has to either hear that from somebody, or he has to read it, or he finds some relics. Now, he did find a bunch of Sith artifacts. We do know he went searching for Jedi artifacts, and he found a lot of Sith, and I think he even found some of Palpatine's old hidden bunkers with artifacts. So he may have picked it up from there. But it'd be pretty cool to know that Ahsoka was the one that gave him the history lesson of how the Jedi fell, right?
Yeah.
Which would be very impactful for how he would determine recreate the Jedi Order, right?
Totally. Yeah, I think because if we think of these artifacts, I have a feeling they're not going to have names. Like it just because we know Anakin was known as, or they assumed he was the chosen one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's not like the text says Anakin Skywalker is the chosen one. There is going to be a chosen one, and because they sensed how strong the Force is with him, they just assumed it was him.
Right.
So even if Luke finds a lot of these artifacts and he's even trying to learn about Palpatine, I don't think there's going to be word for word Darth Sidious did this, this, and this. So I think most of that type of knowledge he's going to have to get from Ahsoka, because again, we also don't know how much Obi-Wan and Yoda told him. I'm really guessing that what we saw in the movies is pretty much 80% of what they talked about.
Yeah, agreed.
So he needs to meet people like Ahsoka and other Jedi that are still alive, that were alive back then, to fill in the major parts of the story. Because, like I said, with artifacts, I'm not sure that he's going to get, like, he might read about the chosen one, and then someone has to tell him your dad was the chosen one. Oh, really?
Right.
I didn't know that.
Okay, so if that's the angle, then if that's the benefit of meeting someone like Ahsoka to learn more, how does knowing more about Anakin, his father, help him as a Jedi, as a person? Like, how do you think that actually helps him?
Well, we know that Anakin struggled with his emotions. That's what led him down the wrong path. He could not control his emotions, right? So if that's part of the story that Luke finds out about, then he knows where he has to train to control his emotions. That's one way I can see that helping him.
Yeah. But here's the thing too, is what we see of him in the sequel trilogy. Does that mean he did or didn't learn about his father?
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, the way I look at it, part of me, most of me feels like he doesn't know more as much about Anakin. So basically what we see in the sequels, it'd be hard pressed for me to believe that he has met Ahsoka and that he has learned all of this history and everything from her because of what he decides to do in the sequel trilogy. Part of me doesn't feel like that would line up. And I think that would cause a lot of continuity issues.
It would mean not considering the sequels part of canon because of how we saw Luke. He's a recluse. He's quiet. He's turned his back on the Force. And when we start seeing the flashbacks of his story with Kylo Ren, he failed Kylo Ren in his training, and then he came to kill him. That's treading in the same waters that Anakin did when Anakin went to rescue his mom from the Sand People. Like there's those moments that are going to lead you down the dark side where you can't turn away from. And in the flashbacks that we saw of Luke doing these things and making these, I think he realized what he was doing, and that's why he put himself into exile. He did exactly, Yoda did it to hide, because they had, the last few Jedi had to hide, but Luke put himself into exile because he thinks he failed.
And he wanted to end the Jedi.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly selfish, for one, and not and arguably not the type of character we've seen him from the original trilogy, right?
Which is why there's some strife with the sequel trilogy that people disagree, you and me included. They didn't write Luke the way us 40-year-old fans, or 40 years long fans, have expected where he would be at this point of seeing him again. So, you would have to put him and Ahsoka together. We would had to have gotten a different Luke in the sequels.
Yeah, because you see him, when you see this appearance with him in The Mandalorian, it's like that is the Luke that we expect.
Exactly.
And teaching and wanting to help. He says, I'm gonna protect that child with my life.
Yeah.
And it's like that's the Luke Skywalker we know of. So unfortunately we didn't get him in the sequel. So let's flip the coin then, right? And let's talk about Ahsoka, because I think with the history that she has, like you said, she knows Anakin almost better than anybody besides probably Padme. Worked under Anakin directly for 3 years of the Clone Wars.
Yep.
Saw him fall, basically. I mean, sensed it. We saw the last season of the Clone Wars. She sensed something happened to Anakin.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately, and you haven't gotten there yet, have you, in Rebels?
I have not, no. But it's okay. I know pretty much everything that happens.
I mean, ultimately, she faces him in Rebels, right? So there is a history, a big history, with not only Anakin and Ahsoka, but Ahsoka and Vader.
Right.
So she knows both sides of him. So meeting the offspring of Anakin Skywalker, I mean, what do you think? How does that impact her? What does that mean to Ahsoka? What could that mean to her character at this point in time?
First, I would argue that she may know Anakin even better than Padme did, because Anakin hid a lot from Padme.
True. Yeah.
He was always gone on missions. He never told her everything that was going on. He just kept saying, I'm going to protect you. I won't let anything happen to you. But she doesn't really know what he was like when he was out there. I think Ahsoka saw a lot more of him,
mm-hmm.
which is similar if you think of your own life. Sometimes our friends know more about us than our spouses do,
right,
or at least they see things. So that's how I'm kind of looking at that. So I think Ahsoka does know him really well, and we saw, like you said, when we saw her feel his turn to the dark side, and we saw her arguing with Darth Maul over, she wouldn't accept Darth Maul telling her Anakin is the one that the Emperor is priming to be his next Sith beside him, and she wouldn't accept it, and that's what started the fight between the two of them. So I think when she sensed him turning and knows what happened, and again it brings up the other question that we were speaking about on Mandalore, is how much does she know after that? Did Obi-Wan ever meet up with Ahsoka to fill her in on everything that happened?
Right.
I think for her to find out that Anakin, her friend, her master, had offspring, had children, I think that would mean so much to her that the good part of him continues on, because she knows how good of a person he was and how good of a warrior he was, and like we all witnessed it. That's again why it's so tragic he did fall. I think for her to learn that he's got 2 kids out there that are going to be part of what she knew of Anakin, it's going to mean a lot to her. And I think she's probably going to I would think she'd want to reach out and meet them and know them and see how much of Anakin is in them. And I mean, where does she go with that? Does she want to, because we just found out on Gallery, for people that don't realize it, she's a lot older than Luke, 18 to 20 years older than Luke. So can she help Luke? Can she train him? Because the argument too is there's nobody, when we see Return of the Jedi end, there really is no other Jedi left. They're very few and far between. Who continues to train Luke? Because he just kind of reached becoming a Jedi, and then he had to face Vader down, and Vader helped him defeat the Emperor. But who's left to continue his training,
right,
and teach him, more? I guess at that point, once you become a Jedi Knight, you really are just learning by experience.
Mm-hmm. So, totally.
And Ahsoka's got a heck of a lot more experience. So how would she be interested in training him? I don't know. I think for me, emotionally, I would just feel like, to find out that her best friend and her master has kids, she would want to be part. She would want to check in on them, make sure they're okay, make sure they're, not in trouble. They're not being led towards the dark side because of what happened to Anakin. I don't know. That's kind of what I feel.
Yeah. And I feel the same way. I think she'd be thrilled to have the opportunity to meet his kids, or maybe she doesn't know that, he had twins. Maybe he just knows, because Leia is, at this point, Leia is a solo, Organa Solo, but Luke Skywalker. I mean, even the name has got to make her raise her eyebrows if she hears of a Luke Skywalker out there, right? So, and the fact that she has met Grogu as well, at this point and knows that there's a Force sensitive child that looks like Yoda out there. But, the interesting thing is she did not decide to train him, right? She did not. And one of the reasons she gave was because of Anakin.
Yeah.
That she's seen what happens when you fall, right? So
when you're attached to something, when there's already emotional attachment.
Exactly. Yeah. Because Grogu's attachment to Mando. So
yeah.
So I'll get to the last part, but this thing about how it affects her, I do think I agree with you. I think she would be highly affected knowing that he had kids. And I could not see her not being involved in Luke's life or wanting to then help guide him into making the correct decisions. Now,
yeah.
I by no means think that she would ever say, you shouldn't start a new Jedi Order or you shouldn't do this, because even though she walked away, that doesn't mean she still has, respect and love for Jedi. I think she just, walked away at the time because of what happened to her. But that leads to our last point, really, I think, is because of some of the things we just said, and because of like how I think she would want to be involved with Luke, it just makes me completely, deciding right now, if I had to make a bet, that they do not ever meet.
Really?
Because of the impact I feel like it would have on their characters.
Yeah.
And the fact that we don't see that impact later on, because now, of course, you can argue that, it wasn't planned and now we're trying to make it fit. I don't know. That's one of them things where when you have mixture of characters from different mediums, movies, TV shows, novels, it becomes sometimes it could create those issues of importance and perspective if these characters start crossing mediums and meeting each other, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're kind of going to have that, in my opinion. You're going to have that with some of these other characters like Dr. Aphra and Hera. Once she becomes, we've seen the ghost ship in the movies, but we haven't actually seen the ghost crew, right? But there's rumors that Hera is going to be making her jump to live action as well, and we know she's been in the original trilogy throughout the battles of that. So anyway, I just think because of what we talked about with Luke in the sequel trilogy, I don't know. It's hard to imagine that he got to know or met Ahsoka and she did not stick with him through rebuilding, or at least guiding him through the rebuilding of the Jedi Order at first, and help him with those issues if he had those thoughts of hatred or anger or attachment. Yeah. So I don't know. For me right now, I don't know if you can have them meet. Where are you on with that?
Well, and it also comes down to these characters' names: Grogu, Ahsoka, Ezra. None of them ever being mentioned in the original trilogy, in the sequel trilogy. So how do you write, because we know what happened in the sequels now, how do you write anything to fill in the gaps between the original trilogy? Because there's 20 years between Jedi and Force Awakens? 30 years.
30 years.
How do you fill that in with story stuff that makes sense and explains what happened for Ahsoka, Ezra, Grogu, and whoever else to just disappear from existence?
Yes.
To not ever be mentioned in the sequels, and yet it still jives with what we saw in the sequels. Because that ultimately comes to, I mean, does Luke build the Jedi Academy? Ahsoka helps him. Grogu is in there, and they're like, maybe Kylo Ren isn't the only one that falls. Maybe he loses all of them, and that's why he goes off and I don't know. I mean, what can you write to answer that as to why these characters aren't around in the movies? I mean, they have to answer that, and I have to believe that if Favreau and Filoni are going to try to answer it, that they will come up with a way that we can trust and be okay with. But you might be right. Maybe they just never did meet. But we still have to see, well, then what happens to Ahsoka? Why? Why didn't they meet?
Yes. Yeah, because at this point in time, wherever Luke is leaving to take Grogu, mm-hmm. Ahsoka, as we know right now, is looking for Thrawn. So I think obviously with Ahsoka's Disney Plus series that's coming out, tying into The Mandalorian, she is going off still trying to find Ezra.
And that's like way out into like the outer reaches or something too, isn't it?
Yeah, the unknown regions, but he's been gone now for 9-10 years. So who knows where he is, to be honest. Who knows? Because she obviously is looking for Thrawn. So Thrawn is maybe came back and has made an appearance. But that's another thing too. It's like you would think that if Ahsoka meets Luke and Ahsoka has this issue of finding Ezra and stopping this galactic threat possibly that Thrawn has become, why wouldn't Luke help in assisting in that, right? Yeah. Does that even become that much of a threat that Luke doesn't even get involved, right? Like you said, there's a lot of story with both characters right now that it's just piling. The evidence is piling up to where they're so important individually. It's hard to see them meeting because it's hard to see them not get involved in each other's lives at that point with what they're going through.
Right.
So I just right now obviously this question that we're debating is what would it mean for them? I think we've discussed what it would mean for them if they did meet, but ultimately I'm pretty much at the point where I just don't think they will meet. I just don't see how they can do. I mean, unless it truly is just like a brief introduction and hi, I'm Anakin, or hi, I'm Luke. Hi, I'm Ahsoka. Good to meet you. And that's really it.
Yeah.
I mean, similar to what Mando and Luke had, right? Just like a brief conversation. And it's like, yeah, but it's hard to do when Ahsoka's looking at the offspring of Anakin. How can you not want to know more about this kid?
I know. And I mean, we would expect something special for them to meet, but what if they meet and she finds out that he's going to try to train Grogu? She already turned away from that, and now she disagrees with him training Grogu, and that's why she says, okay, I don't want to be part of that.
That's very true.
And goes off on her own. Like, she gives him the warnings, and off she goes. Again, maybe she comes and takes Grogu from him, because Grogu's not anywhere in the future either, right? So
I know. It's true too. That's true too.
But I mean, like I said, I gotta believe that, like you just said, that she would want to meet him. So I don't think it would ever be, hey, how's it going? And good luck. I would expect it to be something special. It would be a big moment. And I still think maybe the answer is because there's 30 years. A lot can happen in 30 years. You look at the original trilogy. That was over the course of, 5 years? The whole story of the original trilogy?
Mm-hmm.
That was 5 years. That's a lot. We got 30 years to deal with now. A lot can happen. He could totally go on adventures with Ahsoka, do all kinds of stuff. Grogu could grow up, go off and want to find his people, and Ahsoka and Luke just eventually part ways. Maybe Luke settles down. You know what? I'm going to help my friends Han and Leia with their son now. So Ahsoka says, okay, I got other stuff to do. And off she goes. Like, I mean, there's just so much time there that they could be involved with each other and then part ways. And we just catch up to that parting of ways, because we don't really know where Ahsoka is at the sequel trilogy. We don't know what she's doing at that time, part of the timeline. So
yeah, but what we do know is that we do hear Rey hears her voice at the very end of Rise of Skywalker.
So is that all Force ghost voices?
Well, everybody else is apparently dead.
Yeah.
So you would venture to guess that at that point she is dead. And honestly, that's a crazy thought to think that, prior to Luke starting his academy, is it possible that, and I don't know how she would, but I mean, just think, what if somehow Ahsoka does turn and Luke has to, they have to fight, and Luke is the one that kills her. And that's why she's not around. And that's why we never hear about her again. That's that's a storyline I probably guess that a lot of people don't want to see.
No.
But that would solve that issue, right?
Yeah.
But more than likely, it's just like the Clone Wars. I think Ahsoka is not a Jedi. She's not getting involved. And I don't think there's anything, if she hasn't come back at this point, I don't think she'll ever come back. So,
unless the draw of knowing Anakin has a kid is what brings her back.
I don't know if that's even enough.
No,
Yeah. I mean, again, I think maybe for guidance, like if you want to call me and for an opinion or, some advice, then I'll be there, but I'm not getting involved in the order again. Right.
How crazy would that be to see them together and Luke looking to her for guidance and questions? Yes. I mean, that, because we're left with what we saw of Luke, thinking he is the all-powerful. He's the next chosen one, per se. Mm-hmm. And now he sees Ahsoka, and she's the one that has things to teach him. I think I would have to see it. It's hard for me to visualize that. I would have to see that to get the full scope of that sunk in, that, she's the one that has the experience to teach him.
That's right. And that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool thought if you think about it too, because it's always a cool thought to think that Obi-Wan trained Luke, because, Obi-Wan trained Anakin and then Obi-Wan trained Luke. But it's even cooler to think Anakin trained Ahsoka, Ahsoka trained Luke.
That is so cool.
That is cool. That's
a connection. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah.
So that would be interesting to see. Maybe Luke trains under her a little bit before going off and starting that. I mean, that would be a cool aspect. And I think that would work, because there would be a brief time where he just learned some things from her and then just took that knowledge and did his best to start the order, so because that he could still fall into those same patterns that we see in the sequel trilogy once he gets Ben,
Exactly. And I think for her, that would be a way for her to honor her time and relationship with Anakin, is to help his son as much as she can. Make sure she sets him off on the right path so that things don't happen the way she knows that happened for Anakin. That could be a reason for her to stick around. It's like, I owe this to Anakin. That's
pretty good. I like that a lot. And maybe you're right. Maybe at that point she does take Grogu, and that's why Grogu's not around when, again, Luke starts his order. Since there is 30 years, there is, all that can take place within a year or two, and it wouldn't really affect that much down the line. Because I think he doesn't even start his Jedi Order until 10 years or so after Return of the Jedi. So there's still several years there left that he can do this and meet her and do those things. So part of me is changing my mind a little bit, but anyway, the impact was the question. I think we hit on that a lot. So any final thoughts on this topic?
The impact of the two of them. I mean, how would that impact us, the fans, right?
Oh, good. Yeah.
I mean, just imagine, because Luke's been with us for 40 years. We just talked about that in discussing the Gallery episode. And Ahsoka's been with us for, well, there were 7 seasons of Clone Wars, but how many years between 6th season and the 7th season?
Well, we've known about Ahsoka since 2008. That was her debut. So 13 years.
13 years away. So she's also been there. And I know she struggled in the beginning. Fans weren't that keen on her in the beginning, but she grew on everybody and became a fan favorite. And the success of her coming to live action on The Mandalorian, the feedback is overwhelmingly positive. Rosario Dawson's performance of her.
Right.
That even for fans that don't know the Clone Wars, like I know my own family in my own home here, they didn't know Ahsoka other than the little bit that I showed them because we hadn't watched Clone Wars yet before she showed up on Mandalorian, but they were just instantly in love with this character. I think the amount that she has grown on people and the history that we have with Luke, for the two of them to come together, you're gonna need people to revive us because we're gonna just be on the floor. We're all gonna be fainted or something on the floor. Like I don't think our Star Wars hearts can take it. It'll be so impactful to us as viewers to see these two. It's similar to what we were discussing with. You've got 40 years of Luke and his relationship with Yoda, and now he takes charge of a baby version of Yoda's species. You don't know the name of. That bringing a newest character created on The Mandalorian and connecting it to the history of the last 40 years, that was huge. That put tears in all of our eyes to watch something of that, because we were saying on The Mandalore, Grogu took the world by storm. There hasn't been a character like that in that I can remember that simply took the world by storm, and then you piece that or put that together with the history of Luke Skywalker. It was huge. So I think that's the level of impact that we're going to have when Ahsoka and Luke meet.
Yes, I agree with you. They are, as in Luke and Ahsoka, they are arguably two of the most popular characters out there. Yeah. Maybe Leia and Han aside. They and honestly, like right now, that's why we're talking about them, right? They're so relevant right now too, right? Because Ahsoka's got her own series coming out. We just saw the return of Luke Skywalker. Of course, there's rumors that he may pop up in something else. Yeah. I don't think there's there would be a very small percentage of fans out there that would not like to see this. And I agree with you. I think it would be very emotional and impactful for us to see something like that. And I think something that would stick with us for a very long time.
Well, and you got to think of the generations too. You and me grew up with Luke Skywalker, but how many fans younger than us started with Ahsoka?
Yeah, well, my daughter's favorite character is Ahsoka.
Ahsoka is their Luke.
That's exactly right.
Rey is going to be someone else's Luke.
That's right. And she already has been. Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So,
man, good stuff. That is some good stuff. I think a lot of people are talking about this, so hopefully you guys enjoyed us. Let us know what you thought. We got several people on YouTube hitting the comments on this thing, so let us know what you think about this, and we'll talk about it later on Inside the Force also. Thanks, CyberRen, for joining me on this.
Oh yeah.
Now that you've loosened up some of your podcast shows right now, we'll get him on this on our side a little bit more coming in the coming weeks.
Anytime. Yeah. I enjoy being here. It'll be good. Give us something to talk about still in the Star Wars universe. Yeah.
Yes. So check more of this out on our YouTube channel, InsideTheForce.com. And of course, go to any podcast feed out there and search for the Mandalore podcast. We do in-depth discussions on, of course, the Mandalorian, but pretty much all the Disney Plus shows right now. We tackled season 7 of the Clone Wars. We tackled the first season of the Bad Batch. We are gearing up to cover. We won't do all the episodes of Visions, but we will do a deep dive into the Book of Boba Fett, which kicks off in December.
Yep. And then Andor, and then Obi-Wan.
Ahsoka. Yeah. Bad Batch season 2. There's all kinds of stuff coming.
Yeah.
So, thanks everybody for checking this out. Again, more council sessions, more Beyond the Sagas coming. more Masters of the Order coming. And of course, our weekly show Inside the Force is still hitting your airwaves. Thank you, CyberRen, as always.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Take care, everybody. See you next time. May the Force be with you.